Good morning everyone and welcome to our final session of the season. My name is Gus Murray, I'm the Managing Director here at Revolt, and today we're going to be welcoming Jakob Kistorp, the co-founder and CEO of Offset Motorcycles, who are issuing in a new era of e-mobility. We'd really want to just say thank you for all of your time and effort in watching our previous sessions this year. If you have any questions for Jakob or myself, please leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, please welcome Jakob to the stage. Welcome, Jakob.
Thank you.
Welcome to our sessions. Maybe just quickly, if you'd like to give a brief introduction to yourself and then Offset.
Yeah, I will. So my name is Jakob Kistorp. I'm CEO and co-founder of Offset Motorcycles. So prior to Offset Motorcycles, I was 10 years with Rainmaking as co-founder and partner, and left that prior summer. And then found myself in a situation where a good friend of mine and also my lawyer introduced me to Offset Motorcycles because they'd actually been at it for a year building a prototype, and now they needed a co-founder and CEO to come in and help it build a business around it, do fundraising. And for me, that was the perfect opportunity since having been in sort of the venture building, corporate innovation, startup acceleration game, I knew my next venture needed to be something that was a bit more, what do you say, not attainable, but graspable, if that's something you can grasp and something you can touch and feel. And for me, having ridden motorcycles for many years, I'm very passionate around that. It was a perfect fit.
And maybe just give a quick introduction to Offset and
absolutely
and what they're or what you guys are up to.
Yeah, so Offset Motorcycles, so we're a designer and manufacturer of electric motorcycles built for the urban and off-road environment. So a Danish startup founded in 2019. We're about 8 people, and we're really aiming at trying to completely redefine what a motorcycle can be. And you can redefine because now we have an electric drivetrain, so you can make it a hell of a lot more simple, much cheaper, more accessible, and easier to ride. So that's our mantra, building something that's clean, simple, and affordable.
And how did you guys, I mean, Denmark has had let's say a gap in the manufacturing of motorcycles.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. There was a previous one, I think, manufactured.
Yeah.
How did it start and come about? Like, what was the driving force behind like Offset? Was it, to go down this more sustainable path and build something that was like where we saw a future in terms of sustainability? Or was it because of the opportunity that like an electric drivetrain presented as a redefining or disrupting like motorcycle manufacturing?
Well, the latter mostly, simply because with an electric drivetrain, you are able to completely redefine what the motorcycle should be, and then being able to build and design something that holds so much passion for a lot of people, like a motorcycle, like a design object, is once in a lifetime chance for many of us. And then the team was there, designers, brand identity builders, and also motorcycle builders and engineers. So it was a really good match for us to try and tackle this. Obviously, it's not easy, but it's easier than building an internal combustion engine motorcycle, just because of the sheer level of complexity involved in building internal combustion, where electric drivetrain, you have maybe 90 parts, excluding bolts and nuts in an electric motorcycle, whereas probably 400 or 500 in an internal combustion engine.
And how does that influence like the actual product in terms of now, like in terms of, I guess, price point, the audience that you're primarily trying to target, and also separate yourselves from some of the existing internal combustion products on the market that way?
Yeah, I think as mentioned, it lowers complexity for us as a manufacturer and designer and in the product design phase, but also lowers complexity for the end user because it's super easy to use. There's no maintenance at all. Obviously, there's the usual bits and bobs like oiling the chain and making sure that there's air in the tires. That's pretty much it. So the normal stuff you would do to your normal bike with pedals, you would do to an electric motorcycle. And if you compare it to, or look at the normal internal combustion market, we see very few existing incumbent motorcycle manufacturers going into the electric motorcycle market, and that's because they have a lot of heritage connected to their brand, like Harley Davidson, like Ducati. Like, are you going to be able to ride an electric Ducati at some point? Yeah, sure. I'm sure they will. They were planning on doing one, but they scratched that plans just a few months ago. And that's because there's so much passion and sound and vibration connected to riding a Ducati. Whereas an electric motorcycle is something completely different. It's silent, it's clean. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's affordable, and it's lighter also. So you're able to not necessarily define a new product category, but you're surely able to define a new segment in the market that you're going to be targeting. And that's what we're trying to do, not going after the existing motorcycle riders, but actually targeting the first gen. I'm just going to go out and buy my first motorcycle. And that's going to be the young population, because they're concerned around environment, sustainability, and electric motorcycle has all of that.
Yeah. And how are you guys bridging the crossover? Because traditional sort of combustion or internal combustion bikes have this sort of garage culture where you can, modify or upgrade or customize your bike.
Yeah.
And with, like you said, like with electric, like powertrain, the number of moving like components is much more limited.
Yeah.
So how are you guys going to like take some of those parts and apply that?
Yeah. So in our product design and part of an offset motorcycle is going to be this customization or modularity aspect of it. And for us, that means that as a user, you're going to be able to customize certain parts on the bike, add-ons, if you will. So for example, extra battery packs that you plug in on the side, so you get extra range. You're going to be able to look at front fenders, back fenders, if you want to go on-road or off-road. Additional luggage racks, front and back, to carry extra weight. We're looking at being able to plug in extra additional electrical units. Like some people have been talking about, like, should we have a fold-out solar panel if you're out in the woods that can actually charge the bike if you're camping out somewhere in the woods. So that's one aspect. And then there's the digital layer to it, where users are going to be able to actually modify and customize the ride modes of the offset bike. So within the parameters we set, you're going to be able to design a ride mode that fits to you specifically. And those ride modes can then be shared with the wider community, the Rise and Offset. So I'm going to be able to download your ride mode to my offset and vice versa. And there's a plethora of opportunities in the digital space that an electric motorcycle opens up for. And then for us, as a manufacturer, the simple design and also partly the modularity in the simple design allows us also to design different use cases or design different versions for different types.
And how, in terms of the like being able to share and that sort of thing, like, and now compared to internal combustion, where it's basically I can borrow your keys if I want to take a ride on your bike, whereas now I can actually share the sort of the digital footprint or digital signature of your bike over to my bike. How does that influence the way you guys sort of and you're not there yet, but go to market and like sort of what do you call it, like connect with users and get them to connect with the community and that sort of side of it?
Yeah, that's a good point. So as mentioned, we haven't launched yet, so there's a lot to TBD. But the way we envision it is that it's a symbiosis between a digital and a physical product, and it's crucial for us that we launch both street legal bike and app at the same time. And we might even launch parts of the app before we launch the bike to build that community and build that engagement with our product. And we're also going to be opening up for different parts of the product and have open source CAD files, so you can download and 3D print parts for your own bike, share that with other offset riders. And then there's a community aspect of it. We strongly believe that we have the opportunity to build the world's largest online motorcycle club. Because that's possible, because motorcycles has been, as you mentioned, it's been in backyards, it's been closed groups where you had oily fingers and we're checking valves. Now it's opened up and it's a digital platform.
And how do you guys see the like the shift in the market as well, because as you mentioned, like we had the more traditional bike riders, which were more about the actual kinetic feeling that a
Yeah.
bike gave, like the vibrations, the sound and those things. Now shifting over to a new generation and how this sort of e-mobility is like catching on. We talked about there's also policy elements to it, as
Yeah.
well as like a more climate aware or sustainability focused,
Yeah.
like how that trend or is shifting.
Yeah. So I think it's shifting completely naturally. I think the next generation of first-time motorcycle riders are very few of them are going to ask the question, am I going to go buy an internal combustion engine motorcycle or am I going to go buy an electric motorcycle? We believe it's the latter, and what's already in the market on the latter side, electric powered motorcycles, they've, with the greatest and utmost respect to our colleagues in that business, they've sort of been stuck in their own conventions around traditional motorcycle design, and a lot of them have taken traditional motorcycle design and just plopped out the internal combustion engine and then put in the electric drivetrain. That's all good and well, but we believe that there's a bigger opportunity to try and redefine what it should be and who's it for. Is it only for the guy who wears leather pants and for the biker chick with tattoos up her arm? No, it's for everyone. It should be for everyone, and made for everyone, and accessible for everyone. So so I strongly believe that the shift is going to occur naturally, and that's also why we're targeting sort of the younger generation at first and first-time riders as our primary target group.
And how are you guys from a I'm guessing the whole go-to-market part is still very early in the phase, but how are you guys planning on attracting and building that community? Like, what are your sort of key drivers or like ways of actually doing that?
Yeah, so the drivers are going to, in terms of our go-to-market strategy, it's very much related to obviously our product roadmap. So after summer, we're going to be launching pre-sales of our not street legal version. That off-road version is going to be a limited number, and that's going to serve as the platform for the street legal bike. So hopefully that's going to generate some noise in motorcycle magazines, but also we really hope that it's going to be perceived as a consumer and simplistic sort of design object, so that we can run in design magazines and then build hype through pop culture and obviously own channels. And our sales model is going to be direct to consumer. For now, we might have affiliate sales in other parts of the world, but at least for Europe, we want to be in complete, not necessarily control, but we want to have access, is the better word, to our consumer, where you're simply going to be buying the bike either via the website or via the app. And then obviously you're going to have an opportunity to test it out, and that's going to be with test partners around Europe to start with.
And are you looking to also develop a digital platform to support the community?
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah. So that's going to be not in the first version of the app, but we have a lengthy product roadmap for the digital platform. But obviously the community aspect is one part of it. But there's a great piece of motorcycle culture, which is ride outs, right? Wherever you go, a lot of places or Facebook groups or other social media groups will have meeting spots for motorcycle riders. Doesn't matter where. You just show up with your motorcycle and you follow people around. But here with the digital layer, imagine you and I are out riding, you're like 10 kilometers away from me. I get a pop-up on my screen saying, hey, oh, Gus is 10 clicks that way. Why don't you go over and see if you can either catch him or chase him or you chase me or whatever. Obviously within the legal constraints of the speed limit, but that's just one part of that, of the community building. And then there's a community building around sort of sharing parts and even designing your own parts that goes onto your offset. So having that sort of the building aspect of it.
And how like, because I think it's super interesting from a product development perspective, how you guys are looking at it, not only from the physical hardware side, but also the software like component of it. How much like when you look at other products out on the market, either like in the e-mobility side or within like the normal digital products, how much do you think is missing from the like community side of it? Because one part is that and Apple is famous for it, like you have very limited options in terms of what you can upgrade or do something with an Apple product, versus the possibility of taking in a platform and then building upon that platform, designing it, downloading files, 3D printing, customized variations.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and it's also a good question that we're constantly debating internally, because there's obviously working with a product, we need to feel proud of what we're designing. We want to put something to the market that is designed by us, if you know what I mean. So let's say it's an Apple that's put in the market, but with the model that we're pursuing, it's going to be much more of a Linux or a PC that you're going to be able to modify, but within, again, certain constraints, because it is a motorcycle that needs to be within sort of legislation in whatever market we sell it into. So in terms of performance and also what you put on it, there are very strict rules for what you're able to put on an offset, and obviously we want to keep it safe. So it's a balance. Yeah.
And how do you see, like, talked a little bit about, and we talked earlier about the how policy is developing and how different markets are now sort of prioritizing electric sort of mobility over internal combustion, and how that's going to progress and shape like the number of like e-mobility sort of coming onto the market. Because I guess you guys won't be the last sort of electric motorcycle coming on.
Hopefully not.
And how that's going to change our perception of mobility and the different products and services that are coming onto the market.
Yeah, I think as mentioned before, when you're talking about our consumer group and our target group, I think it's no one is debating whether or not electric is the future. Like, that conversation is not to be had anymore. There might be a different drivetrain in the future, 30, 40, 50 years away, but right now it's electric. No one is going to go, I'm going to go build yet another internal combustion car. No one is doing that. So obviously within the motorcycle, that's where the next big shift is. In terms of legislation, we slowly see, at least in the EU, that different markets and the EU as a whole is pushing for more and more and more electric. So to give you an example, in some nations, we see that if you've driven a car for 5 years, you get to ride an A1 type motorcycle, which is powered by an electric drivetrain, without having an actual motorcycle license. And that's a huge step. Paris just announced that you have from, I think, 1st of Jan 2022, that you now have to pay for parking for all internal combustion powered scooters, mopeds, and motorcycles, which was free before. Now it's only going to be free for electric. So, and you're going to be seeing all of this going forward. So it's only going to push and drive demand within that space, and that's a good thing for the likes of us. And that's also why you're probably going to see a lot more of these micro-mobility, if you will, e-mobility platform plays, and also actual products coming into the market.
And how important is it for you guys to, like, when we look, there's other players on the market now, and getting inspired by some of the things they've been doing, but also inspiring the next generation of mobility or micro mobility like elements coming on. And that's, I guess, not only limited to motorbikes, but scooters, there's bicycles, there's like a whole wave of new products coming onto the market, some of which, like you said, are using the traditional design approach, which is just replacing the powertrain with electric one, versus having a more community or product platform perspective, and how that's going to grow awareness and encourage new consumers into the market. So I think the interesting part from my side is how do you guys see that part developing? Because obviously you guys are taking a little bit of a shift from some of the other players in the market, and what the next stages of that will be.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I think going forward, the level or the volume of manufacturers is going to increase, and the price is going to drop. So it's not necessarily a race to the bottom, but we do see that the prices are going one way. Now, with sort of supply chain being a bit challenged around the world, batteries are actually a bit in the upwards trend, but with Volkswagen and other automotive groups investing heavily in battery technology, also manufacturing in the EU, that's going to send prices dropping, right? So I think one shift is going to be more accessible and cheaper for the consumer. In the long run, I think you're going to see a much more strong focus around the actual sustainability on the battery itself, and you're going to be seeing multiple usage of the same battery. So, for example, some of the OEMs have entered in, I believe it's KTM, Piaggio, and was it Yamaha, Honda, have entered into an MOU around designing a shared battery pack. That's super interesting, right? So you can take your KTM or your Piaggio scooter out to your forest and then plug it into your KTM Freeride, and then go off-roading, take that same battery pack, plug it in your Piaggio, drive home. That is super interesting. That modularity and that sort of shared standard for the industry is going to be, I think, the future. And that also sort of, points to the fact that, I wouldn't say there isn't a lot of innovation in this business, but I think we're looking towards shared standards on battery technology, charging, voltage, even kilowatt hours, what's allowed in a battery, and maybe even also engine power, right? Which is currently limited by legislation. So I think the more shared we can get, the better for everyone, right?
Yeah. I think it's super interesting. Just wanted to get into, we've got a couple of questions coming in.
Yeah.
I've got one from Joachim, who's basically stating, you should definitely rethink your target group. I'm riding a Ducati and would absolutely love to own one of your bikes when available, just for the reason that it would be completely different experience and use pattern compared to the classic combustion motorcycle, not to mention the sustainability. Large sound and vibration is definitely a trademark of the classic motorcycle, but having the opposite to that along with the sustainability is a real appeal to me.
Yeah.
So it's probably more also a question about how do you see the product in terms of the different segments on the market?
I think it's, and thanks for the question. I also used to own a Ducati, so I can relate. So our primary target group is going to be the first-time motorcycle riders, just because it's super easy, and we want to be that, first-gen electric motorcycle that is your only and obvious choice, right? But for more seasoned riders like Ducati owners or even Harley owners or KTM owners, this is a sure choice as well, because the performance, trust me, is depending on which Ducati you own, is as good as a Ducati. Obviously, the top speed we're limiting just because it's going to be draining the battery, but in terms of torque and just 0 to 60 times, it's more than enough to get the more seasoned motorcycle riders excited. So really, target group it's obviously hard to say, but everyone is going to be the target group. But if you really want to look at it, 25, 35 first-time riders, not necessarily seasoned motorcycle riders, that's going to be sort of the primary and who we want to market to.
Yeah. And will you guys look at like an urban version as well, like in terms of the what do you call, like the hardware and the ability to upgrade it in terms of...
the first version is dual sport, so it's both an urban and an off-road geared for that. So that means that the front and back suspension is geared towards being able to actually go off-road and do terrain, not like a KTM, but it is going to be able to get through most terrain with the setup we have, and that includes the tires we're putting on it as well, right? So if you want to make it completely urban, then change the tires. But we're looking at that obviously also as an additional aftermarket choice.
Yeah. And what about in terms of like the different use cases, like you mentioned, like off-road and then urban? Is there also, are you looking at also, because a lot of I would say the scooter usage at the moment in the cities is actually like transporting the last sort of mile in terms of packages, food delivery for the last 24 months?
Yeah, we're looking at, and that's where we're looking at a B2B version of it, obviously, and that again is where the sort of the simple and modular design of the bike comes into play, and also where you're going to be able to put on racks front and back. So having maybe even a fleet version for share now. So that's obviously going to be an option. And because it's digital and electrical ones and zeros, we can power it down so it becomes a scooter where you can drive it with a normal license. We can simply just digitally power it down, and limit it. It's going to be super overpowered, but it's going to be limited. Yeah.
That makes sense. And what about in terms of like how much of the modular aspects of it are you going to open source as well? Like in terms of like one is customizing maybe the colors or that part of it and adding like a front rack and a back rack. How much of that will actually be like able to be determined by the actual users or?
TBD. To be fairly honest, we're going to go into market with a few options and then continue developing on that. And much of that we might also open up for sort of consumer and open source input because again, a lot of it is as simple to plug on just using an Allen wrench, really.
So it's fairly basic and easy.
Very. Yeah.
And follow the garage sort of culture aspect of it in terms of mods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what's in terms of time frame? I think just to walk through. People, I know there's probably a few people interested in where you guys are today and how that is progressing.
Yeah. So where we are today is we're finishing sort of the last touches on our off-road model and that we're going to open up for pre-sales after summer. That's then going to go into market in a limited number. And then through last sort of quarter of 21, we're most likely going to go into type approval. And then we're looking at 2022, where we're going to have the first street legal bike for sale. And as soon as we see the end of the type approval process, we're going to open up for pre-sales for that.
An exciting phase.
It's a very exciting phase, and I'm very much looking forward to having the first bike on the street. So with a license plate and the bells and whistles making it legal, that's going to be fun.
And just I'm just going to see if there's any more. Got another question coming in. What's the in terms of going out and abroad in terms of your market strategy? How are you going to do? You talked a little bit about that before with affiliates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in Europe, you'll mostly go after a direct-to-consumer.
Yeah.
Model.
And in the States, we're not allowed to do direct-to-consumer. You have to sell via affiliates in each state. So TBD on that. So, but Europe first year, and then targeting the States, which is obviously a huge market for us as well. But in Europe, going through partnerships with maybe dealers in terms of being able to test ride. The offset were inspired by obviously Tesla, but also inspired by other manufacturers in the electrical space, where you set up a test ride time and we show up with a van full of offsets and you test it out. And if you like it, you buy it and we ship it directly to you because we can do that within the European territory.
Perfect. And I've got one last one. What is your view on the e-motorcycle market and development at the moment when comparing your offering with the upcoming innovations like the Finnish Verge?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the e-motorcycle market, I see it as sort of you have the scooter territory with electrical mopeds, scooters. That's going to be won by Asia because they've been at it for so many years. Shanghai, I think, more than nearly 10 years ago, they banned all internal combustion engines. So all scooters, mopeds in Shanghai, and just all China are electric already. So that market is pretty much gone and won by them. And then you have sort of the speedy superbike market, where some have gone and I wouldn't say just changed the internal combustion engine to an electrical, but rather gone down that road. And then you have that sort of super hyper futuristic, which I believe that's where Verge comes into play, which is, you know, it's Tron style motorcycles. And they're amazing to look at, but I think that's a very, very small market to target. And I believe that price is also going to be quite high. So we're looking at it obviously from a mid-market segment with a product that's again, super simple, easy, affordable, clean. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. But I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jakob, for your time and introduction and sharing your sort of experience and knowledge on offset.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.